Hello, and welcome to another episode of Power on Podcast, 00Status, or Status, depending on who. Not really, I say status, so that's what it's going to be, 00Status. Boom. Done. I am one of your hosts, Taylor, or Motogaru553, and with me, as always, is Mr. Sushi B. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, Taylor. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm pretty stoked to do this one, because it is. Ever since I watched it, I've been kind of giddy to be like, oh, because it had been a really long time, and I remember watching it and having feelings for it, and yeah, I have new feelings for it.
Yeah, fair enough. So we'll get right into it. I got to be honest, I don't remember the lead-in or hint you gave me to discover what this film would be. If I recall, though, I typically type them out to you as we're talking, just so not to ruin it if somebody's listening and they want to guess themselves. I'm pretty sure I typed out the correct answer to you at the time, and we're both just kind of, big sigh, not too sure what's gonna transpire after watching the film, and we'll just say this: it's Moonraker, and I want to lead in with something else, but I just thought to get it right off the table. I think Moonraker has quite a negative reputation from a lot of people. It's not one of the more cherished of the Bond franchise for most people. I too am actually really intrigued by where we're going to take this discussion today, and I think there's a lot to bring up. Yeah, let's see where we're headed.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing too, because I remember looking up some information before watching it, because I was just kind of curious to see how the movie fared in theaters. That's not to say, oh, because it did bad, it's a bad film or something, right. But I was floored at...
It's quite the opposite.
Yeah, this movie did like over 200 million in theaters.
Yeah, I don't know if that's adjusted for inflation, or I have presumed so now. I don't know if I'm not sure.
Really do that.
Anyways, it made a lot of money. It was the highest grossing Bond movie until GoldenEye, if I recall. So it was very successful. So that success financially did not transfer to a very healthy dose of nostalgia, perhaps, for this film.
I don't know, I wasn't thinking of nostalgia when I was watching this. It was almost like, you know how you watch something when you're young? This happened to me when I watched Goonies. So as a kid, I remember watching it and not hating the movie. And I remember buying it on Blu-ray. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to watch Goonies. And then I watched it again, and I loathed watching it. I was like, I hate this movie. This movie's terrible. What the fuck was I thinking? Why did I like this as a kid? I just had that reaction to it. It was just such a visceral, just angry reaction to it, and I have no idea why. But I despised every moment that movie kept going and going. I sort of had a bit of an flip of that. Like, I remember watching this Moonraker when I was younger. To me, part of it was just being like my dad. He had seen Live and Let Die when he was a kid in theaters and stuff like that, and so there's at least some kind of, not necessarily like family tradition or anything, but my dad liked the movies a bit. My grandfather, never really got to talk to him about it or anything, but I would imagine, since he's taken my dad to it, he must have enjoyed him to some degree. When I got a bit older and GoldenEye had come out for the 64 is when I really started to, like, that game kind of was the catalyst for me to really watch a lot of the movies and stuff. And I was 7th grade, I think. So, how old was I? Like 11, 12 years old. And I remember watching Moonraker when I was about 13 or so and absolutely hating the movie. I was like, I cannot, this is boring. This is so, oh my goodness, this is so long, and it just drags. And when I watched it again, I was like, yeah, this does kind of drag a bit. But I was like, turned down the maybe it was because I was like, well, I'm in such a hateful mood of this thing when I first watched it. Let me crank down the dial a little bit. And when I watched it, I was like, this isn't nearly as bad as I remember it. and yeah, not necessarily, oh man, I love this film, but I was like, oh, you know, this isn't nearly as boring and just bleh as I thought as I remembered it being when I was younger. So yeah, how did you feel having rewatched this?
I guess what I'm saying on that nostalgia, I think I'm not necessarily speaking for us, but just looking at reviews and the overall sort of impression of this film, it's not given a lot of praise for whatever reason, right? I didn't go in to look at all these reviews and everything, but just if you look at some of the, I don't want to use Metacritic necessarily as the standard, but just, you know, you see like a number and you're like, oh, you know, that's not really a great number to see, or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, right?
No, I've stopped paying really much attention to that.
I didn't look for this film, but I know offhand, like I can't recall a time of anybody really giving me like, oh yeah, Moonraker, yeah, I want to sit down and watch that. I don't remember too well from watching it when I was younger or whenever I first saw it. However, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. You know, you do try to avoid all that information that's going on around about a film or whatever. Yeah, I was watching. It was like, interesting. I think there's a lot to talk about here, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. But there's a lot of stuff here that's terrible too. Like there's a lot of parts here where you're just sitting there and I'm not too sure what that was all necessary for in this film, or what was the objective of this or that, or they really wanted to make a different film at this point.
Well, I think throwing the cat out of the bag here, when did Star Wars come out? Because
77.
77. Okay, that was the catalyst for why Moonraker, the movie, is so different from the book. Other than it's got Drax at the end. You know, there is no space station. And I'm not trying to jump way like all over the place, but they basically saw how well Star Wars did in theaters, and we're like, we want to do that. We want sci-fi special effects.
We've got this James Bond, book or novel that, from what I understand, Fleming wanted to make into a movie anyways, and we're thinking, yeah, like let's up the ante here. Let's make this into something really crazy. Like let's go.
Well, yeah,
it was an expensive movie too, right?
Right. Well, it was the most expensive. It was like, because it was what, the sixth? No, not the sixth. It was the 11th movie that came out, right? Was it the 11th?
Yeah, the 11th.
Okay, so it's the 11th movie that came out, and I think it was its cost production was like 34 million or something, but it was like the first 6 films combined cost less to make than it did for Moonraker. Well, because I like, there was some really cool, like, didn't it win awards for its special effects?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, because they put in a lot of effort for the special effects. Like the latter portions of the film, I think they had ran through the film reels like 96 different times or something. Because what they were doing was, instead of trying to film the whole thing in one shot, is that they would film portions of it, and then they would rewind the tape and then film another portion to make it emulate space and all the stars and everything, and then they had to go through and cut out fade out the stars and then fade them back in whenever the ships would overpass them. I mean, there's a couple times where you see that they didn't catch it in time,
right,
and stuff. But from a technical standpoint, as well as, I think, the stages, for lack of a better, what's the word I'm looking for, the stage design, to me, that's some really superb work, like with how the design of the space colony and Drax's lair that you're there for all of 10 seconds to see.
Just a bunch of beautiful people walk out, and that's about it.
Well, and there's reasons for that, but I think if anything,
I think the reasons for that is because that was probably the set from You Only Live Twice. They just did a little touch up here or there.
But I don't know. I think, if anything, Moonraker is the spectacle. Some of the gadgets are kind of nifty, but it's more of the spectacle and what they can do with special effects that really is the muscle of this movie, which might be why it's sort of lopsided with like some people really don't care for it, some people hate it, and it's just sort of
Really funny, just to go back to the Goonies quickly. There is a Bond connection to that film, actually, in that actor, I just had to check his name, Robert Davi, is one of the criminal sons of the I can't think of the older woman's name because I haven't seen it in a long time, but he's in a later Bond movie as a villain. Do you know the actor I'm talking about?
No,
I'll show you the picture. You'll be like,
I've tried to blank Goonies out of my mind.
Okay. It's funny how many actors came out of the Goonies, though, right? And have done like, things in their career and so forth. Just, obviously a lot of child actors and so forth. What's his name going into the Lord of the Rings there? And,
oh yeah, he's also in Stranger Things, I think, as well.
Yeah, he was Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy. Rudy.
Oh gosh, what is that actor's name?
I have no clue.
Sean Astin.
There you go.
And he's in Encino Man, which is terrible, but a fun movie anyways. Anyways, we'll move on. We could talk about Goonies another day if you really want to, but there is a Bond connection there. Well, anyways, but there's a Bond connection there, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I wanted to start. You've kind of delved in a bit of the plot and stuff, I guess, and some of that technical side of making this movie and so forth. I wanted to dive right into an area we don't necessarily hit on right away, typically, not till the end of a lot of, and this is for any of the podcasts that we do, and that's the music in this film. There are some interesting musical additions. I don't know how to say that, but let's start with that theme song.
Oh God. Let's not start with it.
No, we are starting with the theme song because I don't like this theme song, but somehow Shirley Bassey convinces me that it's not the worst song I've ever heard in my life, just because she's that good of a performer.
I agree with that. When you first hear it, you're like, ugh, but then you
it's got some bad lyrics, and
that too.
The whole sequence is not that compelling either, right? You're kind of watching and going like, it's like a weird trampoline thing going on in the silhouette, and
yeah, because it cuts from. This is one thing that is really wonky with the movie, is that there are some just odd transition cuts. Like, I'm not like a big film guy, but when I am visibly shaken by how jarring some of these transitions are, because you have the whole pre-credits scene,
right,
and then it's this action scene, a pretty cool scene done at the time and everything.
Oh, definitely the stunt acting.
And we'll
quite good.
Yeah, we'll get back to that, but it ends with a circus. I mean, it doesn't show the circus, but it ends with the circus being shown and the music of the circus, and then it kind of goes into the theme song of Moonraker, and that doesn't help. And then you get the song that's got this janky lyrics, and it's like, but yeah, it's sung well, and you're like, this isn't. Oh, that's kind of. It reflects the movie so well. It's kind of frightening.
Like, I almost wish she just sang Goldfinger by saying Moonraker instead. Like, and she could just say he's the man. Like, she could use all the Goldfinger lyrics and just say Moonraker over top. I'd be fine with it, because it's just. And then the end song is kind of like a disco version of it or something. And it's weird. It's a weird song. But again, like, Shirley Bassey is that talented that she somehow manages to kind of pull it off. I don't know how. Like, if it was somebody else, again, it's not a perfect by any means, but I don't know. Let's move on from that. There's still some other musical things in here that's really interesting, such as when you meet Drax. He's playing Chopin on the piano. And I'm not quite sure if it's actually him. Like, I don't know if the actor was adept at playing piano. Kind of an interesting intro, and he's just sitting there just playing away on some Chopin.
And it's not, okay. Yeah, and it's Chopin, and it's not organs in menacing fashion. So, because it's a delightful song. I can't think of.
I believe it's Raindrop.
Okay, but Chopin. What do you expect? A lot of Chopin stuff's good. What the heck? Now I'm thinking Tombstone. Richard fucking Chopin. Anywho, yeah, it's kind of an interesting introduction to Drax, because it's not Ganondorf playing the organ, spooky, ominous, but just a really delightful song. And what is the chateau, or what's the building?
Oh gosh, I can't think of whatever his chateau. And he says, he moved it brick by brick from France.
Right. It was just they just transposed this.
Well, and the music accompanies the setting
Yes.
well, right? Like
Yes.
it's a very classical song that just it fits exactly what that chateau would make you feel.
Right. So it's a good song.
And that's not our only classical piece, though, in this film. And that we get a Strauss piece. It's that polka of his.
Right.
When we get the obnoxious hovercraft. Again, an unfortunate use of an excellent song in a ridiculous fashion. And it's not the only the other class. There's still, later on, we get a Tchaikovsky piece, that Romeo and Juliet piece. With and we'll get into the whole Jaws thing later on, but with Jaws, there's just
it's weird.
And this isn't the only unique pieces of music used in this film. You're talking about weird cuts into
oh
scenes.
My lord, I know it's
Bond riding a horse, dressed as a gaucho. I know I'm not saying it in the best,
looking
form,
like he's an extra from one of the freaking westerns there.
And I've not even seen the Magnificent Seven, but they're playing the Magnificent Seven's theme song. Like the song as he's coming up, and you're like.
Well, especially because it's preceded by that scene where he escapes out of the ambulance, right?
Right.
I'm not. That's right. Okay. I'm not like. Okay.
No, it's right. Another character's in the ambulance, and he falls out of the ambulance in a fight sequence with this guy, and he just kind of dusts himself off and just walks away.
And then it cuts to this.
He's on a horse.
Yeah, it cuts to that, and he's riding a horse with a couple. It's like,
why is he? What? He's in the middle of nowhere suddenly. That whole scene is weird, though. They're all in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Moneypenny's office is just transposed.
He walks in. Yeah,
it's so bizarre.
They're in the outback in Australia, but it's supposed to be Brazil or so. I don't.
Well, they're not in the outback. It's
okay. I know I'm over exaggerating, but it's such a. What?
It's such a weird juxtaposition because, it looks like they just transposed Moneypenny's office over that area.
And added a little bit of a red, reddish, brownish mud tinge to, it's in a, what's the word I'm thinking of for the housing? The form of using the mudding to build the house in that form. The names totally escape me.
Yeah, you're losing me on that one. I don't know off the top of my head.
My sense of architecture is not reaching into the inner
I have
depths of my
trouble building
mind.
Lego buildings, so.
And that's not the only other music not in this movie. Another movie I haven't seen, but when I heard this, I was like, that's familiar. And then I had to go find out what it was. And it's The Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's that alien sound that's played throughout the film when the aliens are reaching out to the people and stuff. When he plays the passcode.
Oh, that's what that is. I was wondering, what the hell that was about, because it was
Yeah, because it seemed a little bit right? It didn't just seem like, oh, what, okay.
Right,
it seemed like there had to have been something more to that.
Right,
so that's what
there's
that sound
a nod,
is. So,
a nod and a wink to it.
I don't know who was making these decisions and we gotta have all these little nods to other things.
Broccoli was making this. That's what he expected.
That's not even the only thing. Remember when they play the horn when they're shooting the grouse or the wild turkeys or whatever they're hunting? Yeah, that's from something too. That horn.
Gosh,
what is that?
The THX. Dun, dun,
it's from A Space Odyssey, right at the start of the film.
Also, Sprach Zarathustra.
Right? A few things. Yes, that's it. Anyways, so. It's just there's so many. Oh, we've got to make nods to these other space films like Star Wars and Space Odyssey and Close Encounters and it's just and the Magnificent Seven for some reason. It's the
70s westerns were still popular.
No, but I just mean that it's a space movie and they're throwing this in there. It's just odd. There's a lot of odd hat tips to other things. They're not bad per se. They're just a bit odd.
Poorly executed.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that. It's just kind of a bit okay. Yeah, but anyways. So the overall musical score is just kind of forgettable. Just the background music is more or less just kind of forgettable. But there's all these just other unique musical cues throughout the film that are, I don't know, somebody thought were Easter eggs at the time. I don't know, but yeah.
No, that's a good observation. That honestly, that registered in my brain. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize some of these pieces. Some of them, of course, I didn't, like that jingle. But for the keypad, but it's I just kind of brushed it off. Like the only thing I kind of remember musically from it, and it may be because it didn't have any sort of, outside of like the jingle, because it didn't have any attachment to me, is the carnival. They were kind of, just kind of that sort of, I don't know, party atmosphere, celebratory, just kind of like that kind of sticks in my head a bit. But that is also could be because it's such a stark comparison to a lot of other things going on in the movie. Like where you just kind of, you get the sterile space station, and Venice it's kind of subdued. It's not really, what's the word I want to use? Not really colorful, boisterous. It's
not really. It's a bit of a slower part of the film, but I do like that part, except for again, that kind of, there's a little bit of the goofiness, but I don't mind it. It doesn't bug me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does this movie also not use that one Bond song, that din 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 din? I think this movie had that, and that only appears like here and there in some of the Bond movies. But I don't know why I do enjoy that song. It's not a great song, but it is definitely a Bond song that comes up here and there. Yeah, maybe let's move on from the music and find another topic of discussion.
Well, do you want to cut into the pre-credit scene there? Things we kind of
let's do that quickly.
So yeah, this was pretty ambitious. Like I watching this, and this is something that kind of irks me today with watching a lot of stuff being done through CGI, and I get why it's done, so I'm not making, CGI is terrible or anything. So just thinking of how, when they didn't have CGI, how they overcame those obstacles. And this one, they did it by actually having it's seen as a free fall, but of course he's got a small parachute hidden underneath his jacket, but they have I don't want to say skydiving fight, but it's
a struggle.
They have a struggle as they're imitating free falling.
Right.
Like some of the stuff they had to do was kind of crazy because the cameramen, they couldn't use the typical camera that they had because of how heavy it was and how it supposed to sit on their head to try to film the fight. If they didn't find a way to get around it, they wouldn't have been able to do it, because if they had used that same camera, it probably would have broke his neck from the G-force of pulling the parachute and stuff. So they had to basically replace the lens with a plastic, I think something lightweight, and they had a customized titanium frame for the camera and everything so that they could do it. And they filmed it, I want to say they did it over 20 or 30 times.
Oh wow.
They filmed a couple seconds at a time to do that and everything. It was they put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, just for my own notes here, and I watched the film about a week plus ago now, but I even put just impressive skydiving work. Obviously, there's a few shots where they're trying to show that it's Roger Moore and whoever the other actor was playing that villainous character. And obviously they're a little cheesy. They do have the green screen or whatever, but and there's certain shots where they're doing their best to not show that the guys that are doing the actual stunt work are not them, but you still kind of catch a glimpse. And again, it's the 70s. They did a pretty decent job, and again, it's quite impressive. If I recall, almost all of the Roger Moore films, the opening sequence, whoever did a lot of those stunts, they always kind of tried to do something big. There's the one with the skiing, and we'll get to all of those other ones later, but they're always trying to push the limits a little bit on what those opening sequences would look like.
Well, there's not tons of, I'm trying to think. There's two really big stunts that are done in this film that I can recall. It's this scene, the opening scene, and then the cable car fight. And the cable car fight, for those who don't know, they're suspended up about 1,300 feet in the air. And they don't have cables.
No.
They are not, they basically have somebody who's normal sized and somebody who is really short, kind of emulate Bond and Jaws.
Right.
Because what's his name? Keatle? Is that his? Who played Jaws?
Richard Kiel.
Keel, there we go. That's Richard Keel. He's afraid of heights, anyways, and they're not gonna.
Can you imagine trying to?
Yeah, well, but think about it this way: when that scene, when the cable car jolts, and the stuntman who's playing Bond, he nearly falls off. He doesn't have. He's not suspended by anything.
Right.
It's like.
Yeah, I think they said the guy almost died, right? Like,
Yeah.
just to make a film. That's
Right.
that's the craziness of how films used to be made, right? Like Indiana Jones, all those kind of ones where they're like, we need you to jump from a tank to this, and these guys would just be like, okay, like how many shots do we have, and this and that, and just to perfect it. It's still, there definitely are still actors out there doing it, but the CG has eliminated a lot of that danger, thankfully too, right? I mean, it's
Right.
people don't think that they need
not
to
like,
be doing this
why
for
aren't more people
entertainment.
dying for my entertainment? Yeah.
Right, like how many times has Jackie Chan almost died doing something crazy, right?
Right.
Awesome, amazing that he wants to do those things, but at the same point, at a high risk of potential death. So,
But
yeah, definitely, those are two big stunts for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, if you want to, I was gonna jump to it. It's not necessarily, it's a stunt, but it's not. I don't want to kind of downgrade it in this way, but it's a stunt that's not necessarily as dangerous. But all the breakaway glass.
Oh, sure.
In well, at the time, I think it was when it was filmed and aired and everything, or released in theaters. I think at the time it was the scene with the most breakaway glass used for a single scene or something, because they break everything in the room just to break things.
Yep.
Really.
For sure. Well, we'll get into that part eventually. Why don't we just start kind of going through the pieces of the film here, like almost in a bit of a sequence, and we'll kind of play off of some of those parts as we're going through. Just really quick, I don't know why the idea here of, I get it, Jaws is tough, he doesn't get hurt really easily. I mean, come on, falling into the tent and not basically getting injured. There's yeah. It's not a good first impression. Let's put it that way.
Well, but it's not his first impression there.
For this film, I mean.
For this film, yeah. Well, because from what I gathered, and we're kind of doing some research for the movie and stuff, is that after a certain previous film, or at least the initial scene with I shouldn't say initial, but the final scene with Jaws there wasn't liked by somebody's grandson or something. And so they switched it to where it's different. We'll just say so.
We'll leave it at that for now.
Well, right, because we'll talk about that in a different podcast. But like, for whatever reason, there was a big groundswell for younger fans of Bond, which is kind of weird to think that there'd be like teenage kids or younger that liked Bond back in the 70s and stuff, to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get that it might have been seen as the cool kind of character for younger kids to like and stuff, but I guess in a way of how it's so very different now with some of the just openness of sexuality in there, I guess, to some degree. It's a little bit different. Not just like flaunting, but anywho.
Yeah.
A lot of kids liked Jaws. Yeah. But they didn't like him being a bad guy. And they're like, why does he got to be a bad guy? Can't he be a good guy? That's where I think you get, this this super indestructible Jaws, for whatever reason. He progressively becomes goofier and goofier as the movie goes on.
Right.
Not to like make it sound corny, but that whole circus kind of where it makes it seem like he dies. Because of the transition there, it certainly makes it look like he dies right there from the get-go. It's kind of like the breaking of, okay, he was super scary before, but now he's going to slowly become less and less scary.
A lovable big dope by the end of the movie, right?
Right.
Gosh. Anyways, let's move on. We jump right into the film, giving us pretty much the plot of the movie right away after that. Bond walks in, he meets M, there's a round table, not really round, I guess that's not a fair way. I forget who that other person is some sort of connection to the U.S. government or something, right? And Q's there. Is there somebody else in the room, that scene?
Q's there, M's there, and I thought of the British, part of the British government.
Sorry, maybe
like,
you're right.
Transportation or something.
I don't know. And they're telling about this Drax character and that he's funded, he's funded these shuttles, and he's given one to the U.S. and da 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 da. And one's gone missing, basically, right?
Right. Well, because at the beginning it shows this scene where it gets hijacked.
Right.
And so there's a crash, and then it jumps to the fight scene and everything, and then after the credits, they're kind of like, well, there's this crash, but where's the bits of the shuttle?
Right. It's we can't seem to find it. And right. I love how that scene's showing that. And I think they're talking about, it fell in the Yukon or something, right? Something like that. I forget. It doesn't really matter where it fell, but I just like how it says most secret, and it keeps flashing.
Yes.
just like, what? Most secret.
This is most secret. That sounds like such a British thing to say. This is most secret.
It's just so lazy, though. It's continually flashing on the screen. Most secret. I just thought I'd bring that up. It kind of throws you off as you're watching this. They're trying to be serious, and you're just, was that even necessary to put up this? Like, these guys are all high-level officials, and obviously a secret agent being brought in to watch this video, and it's flashing most secret. It's just kind of funny. Q then goes on to show Bond his new gadget for the film. I guess kind of the only gadget, really, right? I mean, we get a boat, and
there's the explosive in the watch.
Yeah, in the watch. Does Q mention it? I forget.
I don't. He doesn't. He really just kind of mentions.
He just mentions this attachment to the watch,
right?
Which
and
is
then
this armor-piercing dart thing, and it's got.
There's two different
tips
kinds
as well.
Yeah, the cyanide tips and
but
the
you never know when Bond's
darts
using which one at any time, right? Did he
right.
have to load it in early? Like you don't see how it is actually used, other than he's conveniently needs the armor-piercing round now.
Right.
And just uses it. So, and then M gets mad because he shoots his painting on the wall or whatever, right? And says a mark, or I don't know. Anyways, Bond goes to California as a result to meet this Drax. And the next scene is just, it's to me, it's just, oh, come on. Like, he gets out and there's a helicopter pilot, and she's like, I'm just a humble pilot. And she's basically wearing no clothes.
Right. Yeah, boobs just kind of right out there, basically.
One scene, she's wearing the bloody headphones. And then, like, the very next shot, she's wearing headphones. Like, what?
Yeah, whoops.
That's
continuity error.
Mysterious cuts throughout the film. Was like, perfect hair, and then next scene, perfect hair, but no headphones. It's like, okay, whatever. She's got to land without headphones? Like, I don't know.
Just that good.
Just dumb. Anyways, but it's interesting that we do meet the villain pretty early in this movie. I think I counted within the first 13 minutes or 14 minutes.
Right.
Which,
yeah,
some other
I
Bond,
like that.
Yeah, some other films do it, but we do meet Drax.
At least for this one. Because I think trying to keep the suspense of it would have added to the cheesiness.
I don't know if just not only that, it would have probably added to a big letdown. Drax doesn't really come off as any way of being an exciting villain. There's not much memorable about him, really. Like, he doesn't have a quirk, really. He doesn't have, I don't know. To me, there's nothing really memorable about this villain.
Even though it's not the best way I can put it for. And I'm not trying to poke or anything. For a French actor, he has a great lexicon of words. He has a great. I mean, he doesn't have the menace of Dr. No. And some of the his plan is very similar to a few other people's plans.
Right.
And so he doesn't have that going for him either. He is kind of like your hodgepodge of previous villains.
Yeah, kind of.
He's
with creepy eyebrows.
Right, but he does it well. It's not like it's bad.
I don't disagree.
He does it well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just think he's not overly memorable where you'd be like, oh, remember that Drax villain? It was compared to some of these others, right? He's just maybe it's because he's a hodgepodge of other villains. He does have a bit of that Dr. No vibe in I felt Dr. No was also quite well spoken, right? In the way he approached talking to Bond, and this character as well, of course. I can't think of some of the very specific lines. I know I have one later on in the film.
He had a good one early on. I think he kind of has a biting remark about how the British, the only thing that they ever brought to modern civilization is tea. And it's like, damn, yeah. It's like, dude. tone down the
when he has
tone
that
down the
one
venom.
line where he talks to his henchman and he says something like, "See that some harm comes to him" or something. And that's
Not full
he
harm,
said
just some.
only. There was one other final quote I had of his. It's near the end of the film. I'm just trying to scroll through some of my notes here, see if I can find it. I think I wrote it down exactly as it was. So he said, this is quite late in the film, and we'll talk about the scene that happens before. But he says, "Mr. Bond, you defy all my amusing plans for an amusing death for you. You are not a sportsman."
That's a good line.
Yeah. And then he's teasing Bond about missing the bird later, and he's just like, "You missed," and he's like, "Did I?" That scene drove me nuts too. Like, it's so dumb. Like, how would he ever know that guy was in the tree? Like, it was just
But it's like, it's such a
right.
goofy scene where you're like, if you're gonna kill him,
Do
just
it, yeah, instead of
do it.
waiting for him to take a shot or whatever. And
Right,
like, this guy could cover up a death, no
you've got
problem,
all
right?
these
This guy's a
people.
multi-billionaire. He could easily hide somebody's body. It's not like he would ever have any. He hit a freaking shuttle, like, you know. So, anyways, it's an interesting dynamic at the start, and then Bond is taken off to take a tour. He lets him basically have a free tour of this compound of his that's building these space shuttles and so forth.
And that's where we meet. Yes, Dr. Holly Goodhead. Now, I will say this. What's it? Louise Chills?
I'm not
How
sure.
do you say her name?
Okay.
I think it's Childs. Or Louis Childs, I think. She kind of liked the name just because it was such a vulgar name compared to the other ones. At least early on, or I don't want to say early on, maybe about half the film, she does not play this character very well. Like, she comes off really dry and just sort of not interested in the part, and I get that. But her character isn't
No, I
so
agree
bad.
on that too.
I don't think. Like, if you change the name, I think she'd actually be a fairly decent character, because she is, you learn that she's CIA and is also trying to infiltrate Drax's operation and get all the dirt and everything. And she's not like a complete idiot. She's not Christmas Jones.
Yeah, she's not just kind of a disposable female sidekick or anything, right? She
kicks ass sometimes. I mean, towards the end of the movie, Bond isn't the one grabbing the gun. I don't think Bond.
This is a point I want
to
bring up with you about kills. I don't think he shoots a single guy in this movie. He doesn't even have a PPK in this movie. I don't think. All bloody posters have him holding a gun. The DVD box has him holding a PPK in a spacesuit. He doesn't even get issued a damn gun at the beginning of the movie.
He gets issued darts. That's his gun.
Like, he gets darts, but it's just like, why is there all these posters with him and his gun? He doesn't even have his iconic gun in the entire film. It's weird,
right? And it's weird, but I'm actually okay with it. Like, it trying to show that is one thing in advertisements and stuff, and then to not do it is a bit kind of like head scratcher. There was a scene actually taken out initially that was for this movie, and it was put into Octopussy. So it has to do with a certain tiny plane.
Gosh.
So that was initially going to be
get
in
to
this
that
film,
one eventually,
but they put it. But they actually, they from what I recall, they actually put that into Octopussy. Yeah, I don't know how. I'm trying to remember how much. It's been a while since I've seen it. Anywho, yeah, he doesn't pick up one here. He shoots some darts. Yeah, it's kind of. I kind of like that though. That he's not going around just shooting everything in sight. The chain seems to be a weapon that crops up a couple times. Yeah, at least a couple times.
Definitely that one.
Because there's the chain, right? There's the fight with Drax's henchman
judo master
that pops up in the kendo suit. Like, why is he in a kendo suit?
I guess it's probably just stemming to that, like, we gotta show like that there's a bit of an international flair to Bond or something. I don't know, right? You're jumping ahead here, though, too.
We
have not talked about that
I'm sorry.
gravity simulator scene. Where Bond's face turns into Popeye. Like, you've seen that Simpsons where Homer's supposed to go to space and he turns That's the first thing I think of when I see Roger Moore's face going like, ah.
You know how they emulated that, right? He actually just had like an air hose off camera and was just blowing it into his face.
Oh, we should take a step back there, too.
I mean,
there's that scene when he meets Dr. Goodhead, and the first thing he says is, "a woman," and you're like, oh. Like,
Right, right.
like, I don't care what decade this is from. It's got nothing to do with any of the stuff that happens today with, a lot of the stuff we're hearing about in the media now. It's just like, why? Like, it's not even a necessary thing for him to say. But isn't that kind of what happens? Isn't this kind of reflected back in The World Is Not Enough? That's kind of the same moment that we get when we meet Christmas Jones, right? They kind of flip that script into that scene as well, right? Where it's a little bit similar, and Bond is doing the same thing in both of those films, where he's trying to kind of one up her. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and I know what you're talking about. And it's kind of like, stop being a jerk. Like, yeah, whatever. You're not a nuclear scientist. You're not a physicist of any kind. Like, okay, you've got some knowledge, but I don't know. I didn't really like this idea of Bond trying to one up her the whole time that they first meet, and later on too, right? But especially that first.
Well, I don't know if he was trying to necessarily one up her. I mean, I don't really like it. Like, more in this movie, it's like a petty Bond. Like, he's like the dork who grew up to be Bond and has like no suave characteristics to him, or not really, at least. I mean, he's 50, what, 51,
well, that's what he says. That stupid line is like, there's never a 70-year-old around when you need one. It's like, you're damn near 7-year-old. He's not quite that old, but
right.
He's up there at that point, right?
Well, yeah, he was right. He was like 50, 51 or 52, somewhere in there. Yeah, and
you're
it's
pretty
just
old to be in
like...
the game here, brother, and you're calling her out.
Well, but it's almost like Grandpa trying to be cool.
He does have a lot of parts where he's quite petty. He does it to Q later on in the movie when they're in that weird dressed up as the gaucho, and he's kind of trying to one up Q and
with the botany stuff. And
right.
Yeah, that's
there's some petty stuff where you're just like, okay, we get it that Bond has some knowledge, but he is
Bond is super smart and he knows everything.
Well, yeah, he is just a spy. I think later films kind of curb that a little bit especially with Daniel Craig, right? Where even we won't get into it too much, but where he's talking about himself being a blunt object and stuff, right? And him and M to have that back and forth. But here he's just he's a little bit too arrogant for his own good in some of these sequences. Anyways, you get the goofy gravity simulator where he gets up to like 14 G's or something. Like, his head should have exploded at this point. It's just it's silly, right? And the only way he saves himself is the device that Q gave him, which looks completely non-functional the way it's connected to his watch and kind of like on his wrist. And so he gets out of that. I think it's about 13 G's or something, but it's like an obnoxious amount for somebody with no training to reach, right? Like,
that, and also being as tall as he is, because I mean, the shorter you are, the more suitable you are for taking G's there, because the blood doesn't have to go as much to your brain, or as far to your brain, and all that sort of stuff. And he's not doing any of the kind of breathing sort of stuff you need to do to keep from blacking out. Yeah. And
back to Bond's kind of arrogant nature in this film. He goes back with that pilot shortly after that, right? He just kind of shrugs off the doctor there after she, is like, I don't know what happened. Let me help you. And he doesn't say it. It's kind of interesting. I do kind of like that he doesn't have any quip there. I'm glad he didn't say, because this movie does have a lot of scenes where he will say a quip or a one-liner, but this scene he looks at her. He's completely out of his head, right? Like, and he just kind of stumbles off and just kind of shrugs, like kind of almost pushes her away even, right? Which I did like. I did think that was an appropriate behavior for somebody after that, instead of just saying some silly quote of some kind, right? But then he goes back to that pilot, and the pilot just like gives into him, like at the snap of his fingers. She's just like, I can't do this, and then just bam, he's with her.
Yeah, that was A, it made no sense, and B, it was just kind of like, it just was like, oh, it's Bond, I am instantly ready. It's like, what?
Well, he was instantly ready to leave in the morning, because as soon as he was done, because he
he just
both
kind
of the ladies that he spends time with, he just leaves. Like, he just leaves.
Right. Well, the one
thought, or like the first one, it kind of like, okay, he's trying to sneak around at night. Okay, sure, I guess.
Right.
But still, she wakes up anyways and finds him in 2 seconds again anyways.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
And she just kind of goes along with it. It's like, yeah, totally, yeah.
Yeah,
This
she's
is
oddly naive. Like you do get a sense of her naivety early in this film, but she really draws on that as this, he's breaking into a safe, and which is a pretty neat little device he has though, in that cigarette holder.
the cigarette box.
None of the new Bonds would be wandering around with a cigarette holder.
Right.
He uses that and it shows him how to crack the safe. It's just kind of a neat little gadget that I don't recall seeing in the other films really much, but I thought it was kind of cool. But she just goes along with it, and
that and might I say she has a line like right when they're about to do it. I don't remember what prompted this line. I don't remember, but she says something along the lines of, "Well, I never learned to read."
Oh,
and it was like
from her mom.
To me, right. But yeah, and I was just kind of like,
what does this have to do with what you're about to do?
Yeah, it's like, I'll be frank and I'll be blunt about this. I'm sorry if somebody said that to me, and you're like trying to, finish the deal, sort of thing. That's like just cold water sort of thing. Oh yeah, like to me, then I start questioning myself. I'm like, am I like taking advantage of this person? That they say something like that. Like that's just a weird line to deliver there, and be like, oh yeah, totally, that's a good one. God, it's like, what? No.
Let's not forget that shortly after that too, we have to have a ridiculous spy camera that happens to have 007 on the front of it. For no apparent reason other than make sure all you 00 agents pick up the right camera before you walk out on your mission.
Right.
Why is there a 007 on the damn camera? For what? For what reason? There's no reason.
It's to make sure that everybody knows it's in the movie, so that when you go and buy the merchandise, you can be like, I want the 007 camera.
Not the 005.
Merchandising.
Do you have anything you want to get at before we kind of move on?
No, let us move on.
All right, there. That's a good idea, because we actually get a really brutal kill in this movie.
Yes.
We don't see it. It's off screen. It is an off-camera kill. Brutal nonetheless. Would you like to preface this at all as to what happens here?
Well, after the night of lovemaking and taking pictures
gallivanting
of secret...
right. Acknowledgement of inability to read.
Right. Bond's bolting out, and he, Drax is doing his pheasant hunting, and his pretty people are all in and on, and at his marvelous shooting and whatnot, and right, and so what we mentioned before about the whole Bond shooting a dude out of a tree who's being prepped to shoot Bond while they're taking a shot at pheasants. Eventually he leaves, and the pilot from before makes her way to Drax, and Drax fires her.
Right.
And not out of a cannon.
You might as well have.
It would have been at least a little... It is a very brutal death for what this movie really, a lot of it is. I mean, you got the whole thing with Jaws becoming more and more comical as the movie goes on, and this fires her, and you have these dogs. What are they? Are they Dobermans?
I think they're Dobermans. I'm not 100%. But.
Yeah, I'm not too well versed in dog breeds, but he gets them ready and set, and she starts booking it through the woods, and then...
Well, yeah, the henchman's already unlatching him before he's even kind of done talking to her. She's kind of got this idea of, what are you doing here, kind of thing.
And, yeah. And then...
It's a long shot, too, right? It's like a solid 30 seconds to a minute of her trying to escape these dogs. It's not even just a quick thing of, they could just show her run off into the bush and just show the dogs chase her and then maybe hear a scream or something. No, it's showing her stumble and fumble and get all scraped up, and then you get like this one last quick shot where it kind of zooms up where she falls down and the dogs are on her, and that's it, right?
Right.
Old man Bond causing this poor girl's death, his own objectives. I wouldn't say it's out of place, but it's quite a gruesome kill.
Yeah, I agree. It's not necessarily that it's out of place. I mean, considering what the person, what Drax is supposed to be,
Right.
so it works well in that way. But I mean, it's certainly better than trying to use spiders to, to spiders in the bed to kill
Slow moving crabs.
Right.
Were they frozen crabs, weren't they, Doctor?
Right. They were just.
Sorry, they're gonna unthaw.
But things like that would work better. Would have been worked better with Doctor No than it would have in Moonraker.
Yeah.
For Drax, I think, because Drax. I guess add that to a notch of the only like notch he really has of having a brutal death executed there.
That's true, actually. Anyways, from there, just so we can kind of skip along quickly here, we move to Venice, which I like the scenery of the whole Venice stuff and everything, and there were parts of that reminded me of Casino Royale. There were a couple of sequences there again where I'm like, geez, I feel like when this is the Daniel Craig Casino Royale. Vespa is running through certain columns and corridors and stuff, and Bond is following Dr. Goodhead here. And a couple of those shots are kind of similar, and you're like, oh, interesting. Must have got some inspiration from that, or if it's just a really famous locale there, I'm not sure. But
See,
I'm going to skip
I
that
thought of
because
okay.
I want to get right into the scene that made me snicker right away. And this is this stupid-ass boat. Black boat. He's on a gondola with this gondolier. He calls him I can't remember what the gondolier's name is. He does say it at some point. But
is it like Robbie or something? Or
it's an obnoxiously Italian name, if I remember. Like it's a stereotype.
Rabini.
Something. Anyways, they're on this boat. This boat shows up, and you're kind of thinking like, okay, obviously it's going to be a henchman or something in this boat. You're not necessarily expecting a coffin, lid to open, with all the blades showing, a solid like 30 seconds to a minute before it even gets to Bond. And this like old guy pops out, throws a knife at him that completely misses. It's just like, it's so dumb because they just kind of stare at each other for a second after he misses with this knife. He goes to grab another and Bond's already thrown the knife into him, and that's it. Like, and then the thing falls off and he sinks, and it's just so comical. And the next thing you know is the gondolier is dead because he got knifed too, and then it's like turns into a super powered motorboat. It's just...
right. Like, honestly, I thought it was kind of funny that you were bringing up the Daniel Craig Casino Royale, because this boat thing made me think of the World's Not Enough boat chase scene.
Well, I'm thinking with the shots with Vespa more.
Well, no, right,
but not
right.
the bloody boat.
But it kind of gave me vibes of that because of that ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because they both go on land and stuff.
Right. It
felt, not only did it feel out of place, but it felt like that gondola with the knife throwing expert, quote unquote. Like,
you're being quite generous. I mean,
hey, he does
right
kill
in
one
in front of Bond, and he throws it and he misses. Like, he kills the gondolier and he misses. Like, it's obnoxious how close he is for a supposed expert knife thrower.
No, yeah, I get, yeah, right. I get that, but like, to me, something like that, the presentation of it screams like it should be something out of New Orleans.
Well, that's where Live and Let Die has. We'll eventually get to Live and Let Die, but Live and Let Die has a scene that's kind of similar to, right? But doesn't the guy when he gets hit with a knife do like
Bayou Billy,
a really obnoxiously over the top "I've been killed" action? And then machine gun boats show up and those chasing him around, and
it's not good. It's not a really good scene. It's not.
No.
It's not that it's terrible. It's that it starts so bad, and then it just kind of levels out, and it's just kind of, and then it has that just dumb part where it comes on land, and it's just kind of like, oh. The only great thing about that whole chase scene is that when the henchmen give up, the one dude's in the water, and he just leaves them behind. He's like, just forget this.
Yeah, Yeah, it's just a silly scene, and that's another one of those just cut straight to the next scene though too, right? It's like it's just he drives away and just bam, just right into this scientist scene, and it's like, okay, weird. I think we can kind of go quickly over this, but Bond finds some sort of another connection to Drax here with this chemical that's being put into these large orb things. I don't even know what to call them, right? He's just building all these connections anyways, and then he inadvertently kills two scientists.
Yeah, seriously, what the hell?
Like he just left the thing out, not knowing it. It's inadvertent though, right? Like he obviously didn't plan it. He had to get out of the room because he didn't get caught or whatever. But anyways, it moves into the scene where that I believe is supposed to be a Japanese henchman, especially with he's coming in the kendo suit, kendo armor or whatever.
Right.
And they go to like this glass museum that the Bond was in earlier. I guess we missed that stupid fishbowl shot of his face too earlier too.
Oh, right.
And it's not a bad fight scene. It's okay. Like it's not the worst, but there is a stupid part in this whole fight scene in that earlier Bond gotten a vial of this deadly gas or whatever killed these scientists. And he's got it in his chest pocket, and he's getting slammed into walls. These glasses getting thrown at him. He's getting hit with a kendo stick, and it doesn't break. Like it just,
right.
He even checks it at the end to see it doesn't break, and it's like, what? Like you would have known if it would have broken, dude. Like,
well, he wouldn't have known.
You'd have been dead.
Right.
It's so dumb, though, right? Like it's
and it's like, why is he attacking? It's so. To me, it just screams like it would be, for a moment, they were trying to recreate a beat-em-up game scene or something. It's Bond in Streets of Rage 4 sequence or something, where you're like, seriously, why is he in a damn kendo suit? And not only why is he in the suit, but why is he using the boken? Why is he using
I don't know,
or whatever? It's not. Well, yeah, it is a boken, whatever it is. But I think it's a boken. I'm not kendo guy, so
right.
I would imagine they're called bokens.
I don't know.
But why is he using that? Why isn't he using a real sword? Or why isn't he using a gun? Or why? And when I get that's part of the side that you get with Bond, is that you get some of this goofy shit.
It does escalate though, right? They are throwing glass at each other, and then the henchman does get a chain and stuff, but right, and then you get a goofy kill again and falls through the piano, and
he has that
misquoted line from Casablanca, right?
Yes,
Play it again, Sam, or whatever the hell the thing he says.
Right.
So it's just another goofy thing. It's forgettable. Like, I'm ready to move on. Even right. It's just silly. The fight scene itself isn't bad per se. Like, it's just a bit like, why would he come in? I guess if that's his skill, I suppose, right? I don't know, but
why just kind of
not send another henchman?
Introduce yourself when you just kind of be like, hey.
I don't know. They introduced him earlier. They had to give him something to do, I guess, right?
Right. No, I meant like, why telegraph your presence and not just kind of come up on him.
Right.
But yeah, after that, he tosses him through a clock.
A piano.
Well, yeah, he tosses him from like a second
clock.
Story up, and then he lands through a piano and stuff. And yeah, that's a great way to take care of that.
Anyways, we're spending a lot of time on just a lot of bits here, so I'm wondering if we should just push a little bit through some of this, just like maybe hit a couple of these quick notes because we're.
Okay, well, as I would say, the movie jumps to Rio de Janeiro there.
Goofy clown costume Jaws.
Goofy, that thing's creepy. I'm
yeah.
like, I'm not afraid of clowns, but that's a creepy freaking outfit.
It's weird, yeah. And sorry, just before that, we get another scene of a girl in her underwear, and it's like, what? Like, no, Bond doesn't just. No. Anyways, moving on. Like, she seemed like she could have been an interesting character. She's only in maybe 10 minutes of the film. This assistant
before she
Brazilian agent or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't die or anything. She just kind of disappears.
Gets shooken up. By Jaws
Bond
there,
just basically tells her to go home.
Right, and it's just go home, and it's like, oh, okay, and it's a really quick scene, all for him to discover
nothing
that they're that they're really
an empty warehouse. Moving on.
Right. And then
you
Holly,
get your cable car scene coming up.
Right, Holly shows back up, and they have the cable car scene, which is a really good scene.
It is. I love the Jaws jump.
It's really
very
it's
cumbersome.
bad. It is certainly bad.
You get a nice scene though, hey, right before that, beautiful shot of Rio, like a beautiful
Yes,
shot,
yes,
beautiful
yes.
weather, just great day for that sequence to be filmed.
And then it ends with,
It's pretty
you
damn
know,
elaborate though. Jaws didn't really have to go to that much trouble to try to break the goddamn cable with his teeth and this and that, and then he falls in love. It's like, oh, right back to what you said about this goofiness of
right, right.
where did this girl even come from? Why is she
She was
even
just
there?
there. Dolly was just there.
Oh, I
That's
didn't even know she had a
that's.
name. Like, well, it's never said.
No, no, I think her name's Dolly, but
No, I think you're right, but her name isn't
I think
said.
it's on her. I think it's on her. Isn't does she
Credit?
have like a name tag or something?
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
At the end of the movie or whatever
I don't know.
on the last bit of scene. But yeah,
Anyways, then we get sequence where they get into an ambulance and get a decent enough fight scene. It's not bad per se until the very end. But
well, the thing about that fight scene that I remember the most is that Bond gets his head shoved into Holly's crotch, and he's like, "Sorry about that," or whatever. And it's like, it's just this weird jolt of more comedy kind of being put into the movie,
right,
and then yeah.
And then she disappears for the rest of the film until the end, basically.
Well, no, at least towards the last eighth of the film or something.
Well, that's what I mean. Like Holly's out for a chunk of the sequences
Right.
now until basically the end, right? And we get not a bad boat chase sequence scene. This time that we get a second boat scene, which is kind of odd, actually. Another boat chase, and we're in Brazil.
Right.
This is after this whole gaucho in the middle of the desert, or wherever the heck they are. And we get to look at the Moonraker gun for the first time, and it's like melts that head.
Right, the Moonraker gun.
It was a stupid laser sound.
But that laser is blinding. Do not look at the laser. Do not look directly into the laser. It is blindingly blue. But yeah, it has that, and the boat scene. Honestly, I didn't like it. I was kind of like, eh.
It's not bad.
Eh.
It's a fairly quick paced scene, so it's not long or anything either. You get another goofy Jaws pseudo death though. He falls down a bloody waterfall and he's fine still.
He falls down what Iguazu falls there.
It's a beautiful shot again. Like the film director, great shot of like the Amazon and stuff after that. Just another goofy scene. Like, anyways, then Bond basically ends up at Drax's compound after this. Well, we'll kind of cut to the chase here. There's a little bit more than that, but in the jungle, blah blah blah. He gets there. He's got to fight a boa constrictor now as he gets into this place. One of the girls shoves him into the pool of water.
Well, no, it's booby trapped. I thought like he's standing on a rock that's booby trapped that just kind of throws him in the water.
He's mesmerized by all these beautiful ladies that are coming out of nowhere, basically, right? And then he falls in, and it's not like the worst scene. There's other scenes that bugged me more that felt cheesier than this.
It's not that it's cheesy. It just felt sort of unnecessary. Yeah. It's just kind of like we don't need him fighting. Like he just had this boat chase. He just did the cable car thing.
Show his manliness that he can take on nature. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I do appreciate the scene where he's kind of killed off this snake or whatever, and I think that's when Drax said that, you defy all my amusing plans or whatever, and then he looks up, it's just Jaws' legs, like in that, like from the angle of the camera, and he just basically picks him up like nothing, right? Kind of dusts him off.
Right.
And this is where the film kind of goes awry, if you will. So all of this stuff, as much as there's cheese and there's a silliness and stuff, still feels fairly Bond in the Bond threads and the Bond vein, right? But as soon as Jaws picks him up and they walk out of that chamber where that snake was, the boa, it's just a completely new movie. Like for the next half hour plus is a completely new movie, or 45 minutes, whatever it is. It's just totally different now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's... Drax's plan is to set out these shuttles into space to dock at this cloaked, I guess for lack of a better word, this cloaked
early
space station.
Nine stuff going on here.
But
surprised we didn't see Quark like in the back.
Yeah, that'd been pretty awesome.
Serving up drinks to somebody.
Right. It's root beer. Yeah, he's sending up these people because he's going to wipe out humanity and then repopulate with all these people that he has deemed to be of of sterner stuff, I guess, for what he sees as the best of people, and I don't know
They're
if
all
it's
white.
meant as no, they weren't.
That's not true. There was a couple. You know what I found amusing? All of those ladies, even by today's standards, still look beautiful. All the guys just look like absolute dorks. Like like goofballs. Did you notice that? Like, there's that scene where they're on the shuttle, and there's like one of the like a really attractive woman is sitting there, and she looks over and she has to make out with this guy, and you can just see she's like, oh, this guy's absolute putz. Like he.
Right, not quite the
They
Fabio.
weren't quite Native Sterner stuff, I don't think.
Right.
What's that space? What's the space movie like? The All the Right Stuff or whatever that. What was that movie called? I forget. Anyways, but
That
The Right Stuff.
That's a space movie.
Wasn't that the movie's called The Right Stuff or something? I forget.
I didn't think that was a space
I don't know.
movie.
Anyways, whatever. I'm probably wrong.
I thought that was like a World War II movie or something.
Anyways, those guys look like big goofs.
Yeah, honestly, it felt like I had slipped into a alternate dimension where Logan's Run and Bond had intertwined, because that's kind of what like their outfits reminded me of and everything, until they got those dorky yellow jumpsuits with the headphone things going or whatever those were supposed to be.
Isn't Xenogears plot a little bit like this?
Not quite,
but
not
there are
quite.
some sky people. So,
There's some sky people, but not
a little bit of Chrono Trigger.
different.
Were they all watching Moonraker? Inspired by Moonraker.
I mean, Gears did squelch a lot of, I mean, Soylent Green is a very obvious example, but yeah, like it's just a weird jolt in direction, because Drax, his plan is going well. He sends out the shuttles. He even explains to Bond, I took the one because the other one was malfunctioning, which I kind of liked, because this thing, like, we were having troubles with this one, so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to take this other one back.
No, he's kind of it leads in a bit of his perfectionist, right? And like, it's almost as if if the plan doesn't go according to the way he thinks it should, it's just you abandon it, right? You just give up right away.
Well, it's not that he's abandoning it, it's that he improvises. He's like, well, I got this other one, so I'm just going to grab this one back, and I'm just going to go ahead with it. So I kind of like that. To me, that's as ridiculous as it was to do what he did to get the Moonraker shuttle back, even though it's just a really quick scene. It at least makes it seem like he's a bit more practical than trying to, at least with that stuff. It's when he's trying to get rid of Bond that it becomes incredibly impractical, like the Python and the getting rid of him.
I like how it was so convenient that Bond and Dr. Goodhead happen to be going a completely wrong direction, but wouldn't it just be so convenient if the pilots of that ship would just drive by right now so that we could actually jump them and get into the shuttle?
Right, and
I know it's film,
and I get that happens in movies.
Oh man, like couldn't they like dropped off closer and snuck up or something? And we're missing a scene too where you did talk about he does use another gadget, and that's his watch, right? And he blows they're led to this area where they're going to be toasted by one of the shuttles. They escape that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty certain that they would have died there. I'm not quite well versed in the science of fire, but I'm pretty certain that when a rocket is going off and it's something that you can feel and hear from miles on out, that you crawling in a ventilation duct for all of 20 feet. Probably not gonna. You're probably
Solid
not
Snake
going to
managed to make it work too, so not necessarily from a rocket. But anyways,
it's not like I'm trying to nitpick that. It's just one of those things that you're like, yeah, that would be. No, it's just not. And then this is kind of where Holly comes back into. I kind of like that when they get into the shuttle and they do the countdown and everything. She's like, yeah, this is on autopilot, don't worry about it.
Because he has no idea.
Because, instead of trying to be like, oh, look, Bond can fly a shuttle, isn't he amazing? They're like, no, it's on autopilot, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Geez, there's so many other points we can certainly hit on this. They destroy this cloaking device signal, the satellite or whatever, satellite dish or whatever they have, pretty quickly after getting on onto the space station. The U.S. military conveniently has space platoons.
This is the most amazingly screwy scene that I have watched in years. Oh my god. Because not only do they shoot out a rocket filled with space marines or whatever, but they're also decked out with their own batch of laser rifles, and they have a fight not only in the space colony itself, which that works, that's
the majority
fine,
of it's
but
in space.
and so you have lasers
You got
going
like these
every which way,
guys spinning
and
360s
people.
after they get shot.
Oh,
It's interesting.
like, it is insane. I don't know where they thought
That's even beyond some Star Wars stuff,
riddled
man.
brain.
Like, that's really out there. Like Star Wars is not based in reality in any degree, but you don't have guys floating out in space. And this took it to a whole new area, right? Marines, what does he say? Platoon 2, go! And they're like, it's just.
That's
And once
just
they get on the space station,
bizarre.
they're not quite as much help as they probably could be, because so many of them get killed in space because.
Right, because they're shooting at each other.
Really close to each other, and it's a death trap, basically, right? You're going out there to die, basically. It's the no man's land of space. You're walking into a death trap.
And let's not forget that right before this psychotic laser scene, Jaws turns heel.
Turns face.
He turns heel. Yeah, he turns face, and he joins Bond because Bond helps him understand that Drax just wants the best of the best, and Jaws isn't super pretty and smart and all this sort of stuff. And then you get the wonderful 0G
Must
acting.
have been hard to film, I'm sure.
That laser fight.
From a technical standpoint, right? Yeah, from a movie standpoint, it's just kind of goofy.
Right,
But you do get that lovely shot. I forget if it's before or after that, where it just shows this goofy guy standing around with his laser gun, and he's just looking around, and all you get is suddenly Jaws' hand just covers the whole guy's head, and he pulls him out of the camera space. It's pretty amazing shot, because the guy just had such huge hands, right? It's pretty funny. Anyways, it all leads to obnoxious scene, quick death for Drax, goofy one-liner, something about, what does he say? Something about he had to fly or something. I don't know.
He tells Holly that, but then with Drax, he's like, "Now take one giant leap for." It's bad because it's
I do like the goofy body movement he does as he's flying out. They're like, and then he just get the dummy floating out in space. It's kind of goofy, but then they basically fly a shuttle that Jaws and his girlfriend somehow re-enter the Earth's atmosphere safely on a chunk of the space station, and I don't know.
Or like an escape pod or something. I like that. That's what
I did too.
Thought he had died.
I thought that was the idea that they were because he says, what does he say? Well, here's to us or something. He says his only line, and I figured that meant that was the send off they're dead. Right. But then they get this off the cuff remark right at the end of, "Oh, we found 2 life forms or something in the ocean or something or other," right?
One's a really tall man and another's a blonde woman or something, right? Well, I completely missed that when I was a kid. So I always kind of thought, Jaws dies.
And then you get a couple of really obnoxious final lines. Was it he's attempting re-entry, sir? Something floating space sex.
Holly and Bond
no gravity
are
space
done.
sex or whatever. It's just
right.
And what is her final line? Take me around the world one more time or something. It's as bad as the world is. The world's not.
It's bad. I was about to say. I don't think it's as bad.
I think it's pretty bad.
It's bad,
especially that attempting re-entry. I'm like, that's pretty bad. That's a pretty bad line.
That's a pretty on the nose bad joke. They're bad. I just don't think they're nearly as bad.
Christmas
as
only comes once a year.
The world's not enough lines.
They're just.
Yes, that's a really
in poor taste.
They're in the same ballpark. They're playing on the same field. That's exactly. They're very poor taste. Yeah.
I'm surprised at how much time we've been able to devote to the plot and everything. We went through the whole movie, which is not something we normally do, but for whatever reason we did this time.
I think it's because it's such an odd experience because it's one of those really nebulous ones where it's not as terrible as one might remember, but it's not as good as it could have been if they had kind of curtailed some stuff. But
Space Platoon 3, go. Oh. And like near the end too, when they're general, he's like General, I don't know, Anderson or whatever, the leader of this space platoon, and he's like, your job here is done. And it's like they didn't really do a hell of a lot, honestly. Like they came out and screwed around in space with laser guns for a bit, and that's about it. I don't know. It's just silly. Yeah, there's a lot of silliness in this movie. I think that first 80% of the film I could deal with. Basically all of it. Yeah, the knife guy makes me laugh because it's just so silly. But it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. There's still some grounded in reality to some degree. And I don't need everything to be. I love plenty of movies that have over the top stuff. If it's a comic book movie, another sci-fi, that's fine, right? But it's just it's really out of place for Bond, unfortunately. And I appreciate they wanted to try something different. And I know they're trying to ride those coattails of other successful films of the time. That's not unusual for movies to do that. But it doesn't fit. A lot of it doesn't fit. As we said, it's not a movie where I sat there and thought, man, this is just brutal. Like it was, I could sit through it. I sat through it all in one sitting and was like, okay, it's not great, but I'm not going to recommend it to people per se, but it's not.
That leads me into this. What would you give it out of 7?
I know before we were going to even watch the film, I had kind of a number potentially in mind, and it was low. It was a low number. And I'm not going to go much higher. I think the best I can do, and I think being a little bit generous, but like a 3.5. No, I think that's too high. No, I got to think about that again.
Oh yeah, you're being.
I think a 3. A 3 is being generous. and again, it's not because it's terrible. You can probably get through this movie if you watch it, but definitely not higher on the recommended list. And when we do get to the final film and we're kind of thinking about like how might we place all these, if we do that, it will be on the lower end of the scale, and I may adjust that score at that point too. But I think 3 at the max, like 2.5, 3. I'll go with the 2.5 actually. I'm going to drop it down
okay,
a bit more.
Oh, you son of a bitch! You son of a bitch! See, I am a principled individual and already had 2.5 in my head.
I had to talk myself through it.
Kidding.
Because when I realized,
Talk
wait,
yourself
2.5,
off the ledge.
I was more thinking on that scale at 10. And I was like, no, that's like a halfway there. That's too high. So
yeah, I'd kind of put myself into 2.5. It's not terrible. It's one of those movies that you could certainly turn your brain off. But because there's so much stuff that's wonky, it's going to kick your brain on and be like, what the hell is that? And then the last 15% of it, if you've had your brain shut off and then you just turn on, you kind of just become cognizant towards the last portion of the movie, it's kind of like that acid trip sort of final scenes there with Space Odyssey, where it's like, what the fuck is going on?
As
like,
trippy as some films can get, but it's just, you know what, or either that or only watch the last 15 minutes of this movie and realize that it's not really a Bond movie to some degree.
It's Flash Gordon with space guns and lasers and without. Oh my goodness! But yeah, it certainly is not.
Let's start with
like,
Moonraker.
hey guys, let's watch some Moonraker. Right, but it's not as bad as I remembered it, which it's nice. It's nice to say. Yeah, there's a lot of I think trash with it.
Yeah, it was pleasantly less poor than I was guessing it would be, which is going to be interesting when we get to some other films that maybe you and I might have a better affinity to when we were younger or when we saw it long ago. And we sit down and be like, ooh, geez, like Moonraker kind of pulled itself up a little bit, and this one definitely pulled itself down. So, and I know we'll get there.
Right.
I have one in mind that I think I remember liking a lot more than I probably will, or this time through. I won't name names, but it's of a particular Bond. So
gotcha. So, all right, let me give
let's find out.
Shuffle.
Interesting enough, we've gone through 3 different Bonds at this point, so I'm not sure if I can take a wild guess at who it might be. Moore obviously has the largest percentage of films in there, but a part of me is kind of thinking it's going to be
so let's see,
Lazenby's outing. What's your hint there?
Well, it's all right. It's quite all right.
All right, it's quite all right. That's the hint.
It's a very, to me, this movie that line sticks out very prominent, or those lines stick out very prominently to me. It's kind of, yeah, it's all right. It's quite all right.
Quote doesn't ring a bell, so I won't be able to probably give you a guess.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that, because it's, yeah, to me that really sticks out.
Okay.
For this film. It might be what you just said. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Good guess.
All right. Well, why don't we send ourselves out of here?
Yes. Anything you want to add there, or just?
No, I think we've pretty much said all we could. Basically, I mean, we could continue to talk about some of the director's choices and stuff. I know both of us, small inklings to potentially look at some of the director commentary and stuff, just didn't really get the chance to do it. And I know there's always going to be more and more that we could talk about, but it's just kind of fun to break down the whole film, which I don't anticipate us doing again necessarily. We might, but it is time consuming, so we have to think about that, I guess.
Right.
But it was just kind of, as you said, it's a very interesting film with lots of different parts that, worth kind of trying to break some of that down and just see like, what are these choices and why did this happen this way? And it was a good one to kind of go off of, especially after where we started. And I mean, I know it's only the third one, but I like that we've had different bonds already to kind of compare some of their acting styles and so forth too.
Which might bite us in the butt when it gets later and it's the same.
Definitely. No, definitely. But that's okay. We're
such is chance.
Right.
Films, so. Exactly. So So thanks for listening to everything. And if you do happen to watch Moonraker, let us know what you think. And if you've seen it before and don't want to venture into it again, let us know what you think of it.
For sure.
So I am Mutagaru553, and he's Mr. Sushi B, and we will return.